I didn't used to hate pets. I grew up in Dallas with a Labrador named Duke who slept with his head on my sneakers and thumped his tail like a metronome whenever I said walk. But that was before apartment 3B moved in with a yappy designer dog and a cat that walked the hallway like it owned the building, before the daily landmines appeared outside my door like booby traps, before the whole third floor took on the sour reek of ammonia and warm garbage. The first week I told myself it was a fluke. Somebody's dog had an accident. We were adults. Everyone would take responsibility. The second week I started carrying plastic grocery bags in my backpack like a municipal worker, stepping out each morning in my button-down, laptop bag over shoulder, and doing a little scoop and tie dance while the elevator counted down. By the third week, the smell soaked into my hoodie. I caught it in my truck, on my steering wheel, in the foam of my coffee from the downstairs cafe. It was in my emails at work. At least that's what it felt like. Threads about API rate limits and uptime windows suddenly stinking of something I never consented to. I work it for a logistics company off Stemmons Freeway. The job is mostly tickets and quiet, which suits me. I like systems that behave. When something's wrong, you log it, trace it, fix it. People are harder, but not impossible. There are patterns. So, I started logging the messes. Day 1, 6:42 a.m., outside 3C, loose stool. Day 2, 7:10 a.m., firm, outside the elevator. Day 3, 2 piles, both by the fire door. 6:58 a.m. and 5:25 p.m. I set up my little battery doorbell cam inside the peephole, angled to catch the hallway. I warned myself I was becoming that guy, the neighbor with screenshots and timestamps, but I couldn't keep stepping in it on the way to stand-ups. It wasn't just the mess. It was the casual disrespect wedged into the day like a rock in your shoe. It was the fact I started timing my life around someone else's laziness, taking the stairs 2 floors down to avoid the smell, walking a loop through the parking lot to clear my head before I could even sit and code. On a Tuesday I saw him, cargo shorts, flip-flops, hoodie hood up even though it was June. A scruffy white dog on a retractable leash, the kind that zings out when the owner isn't paying attention. He glanced down when the dog did its business, made half a move like he might reach for something, stopped, and kept walking. The dog tripped over the line and yapped at a door it must have recognized. 3B. That was all. No bag, no paper towel, no shame. The camera caught him again the next morning, and again. Same routine, same nonchalance. I slid a note under 3B that said, in my friendliest typeface voice, "Hey neighbor, we share a hallway. Please pick up after your pet. The smell is getting to everyone. Thanks." I added a smiley face and immediately regretted it. No response. The messes continued. On Thursday I caught the cat, a glossy gray rocket, darting out the 3B door and streaking down the hall, tail raised like a question mark, spraying by the male alcove. I read later that's territorial behavior. I learned more about territorial behavior than I ever wanted to. Another note, this time no smiley face. Then an email to the property manager, Melissa, who wore expensive glasses and called everyone horn. There are house rules, I wrote. People pay for the right to breathe air that doesn't make them gag. Melissa replied with a prefab paragraph about community courtesy and how we're all pet lovers here. She'd touch base with 3B. That Saturday, I met 3B in person. He was coming back from a morning Starbucks run, sunglasses on, a beanie pulled low. The dog, its tag said Pickles, unbelievable, yanked on the leash like it was towing a truck. "Morning," I said, blocking just enough of the hallway so we had to talk. "Could you start picking up after your dog? It's becoming a problem." He gave me a grin that was more like a yawning mouth. "Yeah, man," he said, stepping sideways. "It's not mine." Bye, I stared at Pickles, at the retractable leash handle still in his hand. "Your dog," I said. "Could be any dog," he said, sliding past. "You can't be sure." He smelled like something sweet and medicinal. I don't know what switch flipped in me exactly. Maybe it was the ridiculousness of arguing over whether the dog a man was actively walking was his dog. Maybe it was all the small resentments from a year of quiet living, COVID solitude hardening into preferences, a schedule built around peace that this guy was scuffing up with flip-flops. That afternoon I printed photos from the footage. Nothing invasive, just feet and flip-flops, dog on leash, the aftershots on the carpet, and taped them to the bulletin board next to the mailboxes. "Please clean up after your pet," I scrawled. Anonymous, but not really. He tore them down the next day. The piles remained. The smell grew bold enough to punch visitors in the face. My mom came by to see the new TV I'd mounted and wrinkled her nose in the hallway. "Honey," she said carefully, "is there a plumbing issue?" Duke, who had died 5 years prior, suddenly felt like a saint. By week 5, I understood why whole online forums exist with the phrase neighbor revenge in the title. I wasn't plotting anything illegal or violent, I'm not that guy. But I felt the pull toward the petty and specific, toward justice that fits like a key. I'd watch odd YouTube videos, a glitter bomb on a porch pirate, a package that sprays fart spray, and feel my fingers itch. It's not about cruelty, I told myself, it's about calibration. You return exactly what someone gives you, only wrapped in a bow they can't ignore. I started reading the city code. There are pet ordinances in Dallas, waste removal, leash laws, fines. Melissa's boilerplate email was not the law. I found a company that works with apartments to collect pet DNA from a single swab and then match any unclaimed evidence to levy fines. The company's flyer had a smiling golden retriever and the cheerful slogan, "Science solves it." It seemed absurd and perfect. Before any of that, I tried empathy. I knocked on 3B's door on a Sunday evening when the building was quiet and football wrapped up the day in blue-white light. He opened the door a crack. Behind him, the cat blinked from the top of a bookshelf. The place smelled like stale cereal and bleach. "Look," I said, "we got off on the wrong foot. I don't hate pets. I hate what's happening in the hall. Can you help fix it?" His eyes darted left. A woman's voice came from deeper in the apartment, tight and tired. "Ryan, just talk to him." He sighed, stepped into the crack like a man moving through syrup. "It's been a rough month," he said. "New job, late hours, the dog gets anxious. Sometimes I miss things. Missing it once is human," I said. "Every day is a choice." He nodded, looked down. For a second I thought it would change. The next morning, there were 2 piles. That's when I stopped being nice and started logging like a sysadmin with a breach. That's when neighbor revenge stopped feeling like a guilty fantasy and started feeling like a to-do list. The first step in any real fix is visibility. Code or community, it doesn't matter. You make the problem undeniable. I built a little dossier from my hallway footage, timestamps, screenshots, a chart of incidents with a trend line that would have impressed a product manager. I wrote dates in a spiral notebook, like a detective in an old TV show, and taped a sticky note to the inside of my door that said, "Breathe but document." On Nextdoor, the neighborhood app that's equal parts yard sale and Greek chorus, I floated a general post. "Anyone else dealing with hallway pet waste at Dallas Commons?" Immediately, replies chimed in like wind chimes in a storm. "Third floor, yes," said a user named Lisam. "I thought I was going crazy." "Second floor too," said Marco210. "Little brown surprises by the ice machine." Someone posted a photo of a tiny shoe with a smear on the sole. My 6-year-old stepped in it on the way to school. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. Melissa did not like the next-door heat. She called me that afternoon. "Hun, next time bring concerns to management, not the internet." "I brought them to you 3 weeks ago," I said, and emailed the spreadsheet. I CC'd the property ownership address listed on the lease, the one that usually vanished like a message in a bottle. To my surprise, an actual person replied, an asset manager named Craig with a signature full of letters, CPM something. "This is unsanitary and a liability," he wrote. "Melissa, please enforce lease guidelines immediately. Consider poo prints." I sat back in my chair like a man watching a domino fall at last. Enforcement at first meant signs, those laminated ones with a cartoon dog and an overly polite imperative. They sprouted by the elevator and the stairs like mushrooms after rain. I watched 3B one morning read one, blink at it, and keep walking, while Pickles squatted, a perfect, infuriating pantomime of rule avoidance. The signs were not for him. They were for the file, for Melissa to point at if corporate asked, for the pretense of action. I needed to raise the stakes, but not recklessly. I thought about glitter bombs and dismissed them. Too juvenile, too messy for the innocent. I thought about leaving 3B a stack of pet waste bags and a note that said, "You got this," but imagined him framing it as harassment. Instead, I bought a small motion-activated camera disguised as a smoke detector and mounted it over my door, angled to the stretch of carpet where most of the deposits occurred. Monochrome footage, clear enough to catch flip-flops in a hand, a casual glance down. I archived it, date-stamped, unshared. The building was turning on him without knowing it was him. Conversations by the mailboxes grew conspiratorial. An older guy in 3D, retired lineman, told me he was going to start leaving evidence on 3B's doormat as a hint. I talked him down. I didn't want escalation without control. I wanted proportionate consequence, a reminder that shared space depends on shared care. Meanwhile, I waged my own olfactory war. I sprinkled baking soda into the carpet fibers and vacuumed at night so the hallway would smell like nothing by morning. I ordered a block of activated charcoal big as a brick and set it on a side table beneath the fire alarm. I carried a spray bottle of white vinegar like a concierge. The messes kept coming. It felt like bailing a boat with a thimble. But a funny thing happened. Neighbors noticed the small actions. A woman from 3A, the one with the succulents in her window, knocked and handed me a roll of mint green dog bags. "Even if you don't have a dog," she said, smiling, "you're the only one I trust to use these." Soon we were a posse, minus the Spurs. 3A started snapping photos of the hallway after midnight. 2F took to cleaning the stairwell with scented cleaner. 3D, the lineman, found the city's 311 app and reported unsanitary animal waste twice a week, including the address and Melissa's email. Little pings of bureaucracy landed in her inbox like hail. She got brisk on the phone with me, but not dismissive. "We're implementing a pet DNA program," she said, corporate voice on. "All pets will be registered, uncollected waste will be tested, and the fine is substantial." She emphasized the last word like it had a money sign in front of it. "Great," I said, and waited. 3B did not show up for the pet DNA clinic in the clubhouse on Saturday. I know because I sat there with a donut and watched a parade of nervous retrievers and tiny sweatered things march past a folding table where a tech swabbed cheeks and logged names. Melissa made a list of no-shows and tacked it to the board. Apartment 3B highlighted. The following Monday, 2 clever little signs appeared by the elevator. Not the corporate cartoon kind, but laminated printouts of our actual lease clause. Section 12C. Resident shall immediately remove and properly dispose of all animal waste. Failure to do so may result in lease violation and a fine of up to $250 per incident. Someone, maybe Craig, maybe Melissa, after a call, had decided the time for cartoons was over. That night, I heard a hissed argument through 3B's door. The woman's voice again, sharp this time. "It's not about the dog, Ryan. It's about you never thinking the rules apply to you." A thud. Silence. I stood in my dark living room, with the TV paused on a replay, and felt something like pity complicate my anger. I know what it's like to feel backed into a corner with your own bad habits. I know the stubbornness that kicks in when you're embarrassed. But then I stepped into the hallway and saw the fresh smear by the elevator, tracked somehow by a shoe, across the carpet like a brown brushstroke. I lost my pity like a dropped glass. I posted one more time on Nextdoor, carefully, neutrally. Update: our building is implementing testing and fines. Thank you to everyone who reported. If you're in Dallas Commons and need a roll of bags, knock on 3C. I've got extras. The replies were a chorus of bless yous and sarcastic claps. I felt a little ugly basking in it, like the hall monitor getting high on whistle power. But the smell made saints petty. The first fine arrived 2 weeks later. Melissa slid notices under doors like subpoenas. Uncollected pet waste incident 250 in blocky font. The building group chat, there's always an unofficial one, lit up with fire emojis and half jokes about class action lawsuits on behalf of our noses. I didn't know for sure it was 3B until I saw him at the mailboxes later. Face red, notice crumpled, and then smooth like he couldn't decide whether to fight it or frame it as a martyrdom. He shot me a look that could have been hate or could have been a plea, then stalked away, dog towing him like a speedboat again. This is the part in many neighbor revenge stories where the trick kicks in. A glitter bomb, a camera and fart spray rig, a public shaming bulletin board with printouts in 72-point font. But I had an itch to try a different calibration. Not soft, not naive, just measured. I printed a single photo, a still from the camera showing his flip-flops and the leash handle, and the unmistakable, uncollected mess. On the bottom I wrote, in thick Sharpie, "This is the last time you leave this for someone else to pick up." I slipped the photo into a manila envelope and taped it to his door like a summons. No signature, no insults, just the truth, undeniable and waiting when he got home. At 11:43 p.m., My peephole cam caught him opening the door, looking left, then right, then down. He stared at the photo for a long 30 seconds, hand on the jamb. He took it inside. The next morning, the hallway smelled like nothing. For the first time in 50 days, I walked to the elevator and didn't brace. It felt like finding a missing step under your foot that you'd trained yourself to expect would be gone. I almost laughed out loud in the empty hallway, a little wild, a little incredulous. I didn't know it yet, but the reprieve would last exactly 3 days. On day 4 of the clean streak, the building woke up to graffiti, not spray paint, sticky notes. Dozens of them, fluorescent squares peppering the wall around the elevator like confetti. "Dogs are people too," one said. "This is a pet-friendly building," said another. A third, "Get a life hall monitor." Someone, unless we all knew who and were just politely pretending we didn't, had decided to wage a post-it war. It was petty art, and for a second I was almost impressed by the energy. Then I saw the fresh, damp coil right in front of the elevator threshold, like a punctuation mark for the post-it's message. Any pity I had left evaporated. This time, I didn't go to Melissa first. I called 311 and asked for a code compliance officer for unsanitary conditions in a multi-family dwelling. A man named Hernandez showed up 2 hours later, wearing a navy polo and carrying a clipboard like a weapon. He took photographs, jotted notes, asked me to forward my log. He knocked on 3B and got no answer. He taped a notice next to the elevator. Violation of city sanitation code. Failure to comply may result in citation. Bureaucracy, when aligned, has a certain delicious hum. I knew it couldn't solve everything. It rarely does, but it could add weight. That night, instead of fantasizing about glitter bombs, I pulled up my IDE and wrote a dumb little script. I called it Poo Watch because the petty part of me needed a laugh. It took motion data from the camera, dumped timestamps into a CSV, and plotted a frequency graph. The pattern was comically predictable: 6:50 to 7:10 a.m., again around 10:30 p.m. This is what habit looks like when you graph it. A person's private laziness made visible. I circled the peaks and printed them. The neighbor revenge impulse wasn't about cruelty, I realized. It was about forcing someone's private disregard into the public record. But then life tried a twist. On Friday afternoon, a soft knock on my door. I looked through the peephole, half expecting another sticky note manifesto. It was the woman from 3B. No sunglasses, no armor. She had the weary, slightly apologetic air of a person who introduces themselves at a funeral by handing you a casserole. "I'm Kayla," she said when I opened. "We're next door. I'm dealing with a lot." She glanced down the hall toward her door, as if it might breathe. "I heard you're the one who posted on the app. Look, I'm not here to fight. Can I explain something?" Against my better judgment, against the script that told me to keep the line sharp between victim and perpetrator, I let her talk. She told me about Ryan, how he got the dog during the worst part of the pandemic when loneliness felt like a disease. How he'd started a new sales job with a boss who texted at midnight and again at 5 a.m., the kind of pressure that eats the corners of your life until you're just a rectangle of stress. How he self-medicated to sleep and slogged awake and started lying to himself in small hourly ways. None of this excused anything. She wasn't trying to excuse, she was trying to name. "I'm leaving," she said, and the words hung in the hall like a draft. "He doesn't take care of anything. Not the dog, not himself," she swallowed. "I'm not asking you to stop the fines. I'm just asking you to please aim at the right thing." And just like that, satire knocked. If you've ever gone down a rabbit hole of neighbor revenge stories, you know how they sometimes swerve into absurdity. Glitter packages, city drones, HOA tribunals. I found myself imagining a kangaroo court in the clubhouse with folding chair jurors and a judge's gavel made from a plunger. I pictured a reality show called Hallway Justice, sponsored by a carpet cleaning company and a dog bag subscription service, with cutaways to me providing expert commentary. As you can see here, at 0703, the respondent fails to exhibit even minimum scooping behavior. The fantasy made me laugh out loud, which broke something in me, a tension string that had been tightened too long. "Kayla," I said, "thank you for telling me. I don't know what to do with it, other than keep doing the boring, fair things. I won't do anything theatrical, but I also can't live like this." "I get it," she said. "I'm sorry." She slipped back to 3B, and I stood in the hall while the building's HVAC sighed like a tired beast. 2 days later, the universe delivered its own theatricality. A man in a Pooh Prince polo knocked door to door with swabs and a clipboard. Compliance day, round 2. Melissa's patience had narrowed to a needle. Register your pet, she intoned to each door like a preacher, or you're in violation of lease and face eviction. I watched from my peephole as 3B opened the door 2 inches. Voices, urgent. Then the Pooh Prince guy spoke with the quiet certainty of a person who has done this 100 times and knows the ending. It's just a swab, sir. The door opened. Pickles, poor idiot, wagged. Swab, signature, done. The test result came back, in the least cinematic way possible, via a plain email. A match has been found, Melissa told me in the lobby, eyes alight with the grim satisfaction of a school principal. Multiple incidents, fines applied. For the first time, real consequences were on paper that meant something. And here, in the third act, is where my revenge turned from sharp to oddly generous. The petty part of me wanted to celebrate, to print the invoice total like a scoreboard. Instead, a different idea arrived, stupid and maybe kind. I went to Petco and bought a large pack of the thick, good dog bags, the kind that don't betray you at the seam. I wrote a note and taped it to the box. For everyone on the 3rd floor, take 1, take 2. Then, in smaller print, even if you think you'll never need them. I left the box on the side table beneath the fire alarm. I knew, really knew, who I was aiming at. But I also knew how bad days multiply into bad weeks when you feel shamed. I didn't want to win by grinding someone down. I wanted to win by making the right behavior the path of least resistance. That night, I heard the soft crinkle of a bag being pulled from the box. The next morning, the hallway smelled like dawn and carpet and nothing else. Day 1 of a new streak. Day 2, day 3. It held. Then came the twist that turned the story from satisfying to something stranger. A week into the clean hall era, a little package appeared outside my door. No glitter, no stink. Inside, a small bottle of enzyme cleaner, the kind that destroys scent markers, and a note in all caps, pressed hard with a ballpoint. I'm sorry. I'm trying. No name, but it didn't need one. I'd spent 2 months learning the handwriting of avoidance. This was the handwriting of someone edging toward responsibility, jagged but legible. I left no reply. I just kept the hall stocked with bags. In the end, what we call neighbor revenge in our culture isn't always revenge, the way movies teach it. Slow motion, righteous music, a triumphant one-liner as you walk away from an explosion you set. In real American apartment life, revenge looks like documentation and policy and politely relentless follow-up. It looks like ordinary neighbors forming a temporary union around the right to breathe normal air. It smells like nothing, which is to say, like victory. I'd like to tell you 3B became a model citizen overnight, that he hosted a floor potluck with his famous chili and pickles learned to heal, and the cat sniffed the air and decided to pee nowhere but the litter box again. That would be a fairy tale. The truth is messier and more American. The fines stung and then recurred, less often. The sticky note graffiti ended, replaced by silence. The dog bags disappeared from the box at a steady pace and were refilled by someone who wasn't me. Once, I watched through my peephole as 3B crouched in the lamplight at 10:38 p.m., bag on hand, shoulders slumped like a man finishing a chore he'd once insisted he was too important to do. He tied the knot with a little flourish and carried it all the way to the dumpster in the back lot. I'd never seen him go that far. It felt, weirdly, like seeing a kid you thought would never get it finally tie his shoes. Kayla moved out at the end of the month. Parents in Plano, she said when I caught her at the elevator with a box of mugs. You did the right thing, she told me, and you did it the right way. I told her I wasn't sure about the second part, that I'd had a lot of uglier ideas, that the only reason I didn't act on them was because of moms who raised me better and videos that made me realize how bad petty can look on camera when you're the one doing it. She laughed, hugged me awkwardly over the box, left. 3B remained. Sometimes you don't get the satisfaction of the villain exiting. Sometimes you just get a truce. When I called my mom to tell her about the resolution, because she'd ask, because moms always ask, she said, "Peace over revenge, baby, but a little structured accountability never hurt anyone." I could hear Duke in her voice, or maybe I just wanted to. The The building smelled clean for a season. Then summer did what it does in Texas, and the hall took on a humid undertone that wasn't poop, thank God, but was still something, life. We learned to live with it. Melissa instituted a quarterly pet owner meeting in the clubhouse with lemonade and cookies and a slide deck that said things like, "We share this space," in a font that wanted to be our friend. I helped set up the projector and put out bowls of the mint green bags like party favors. Hernandez from Code Compliance became a legend, the way anyone who shows up with a clipboard and makes rules real becomes briefly famous. The city's letter, citation resolved, went in a folder in my kitchen drawer next to warranty cards and old tax stubs. A silly trophy, but still a trophy. Every now and then a new resident would ask me for the story, like it was part of the building's lore. I'd tell it with fewer adjectives each time. There was a guy who let his dog go in the hall. We documented it. The building enforced the rules. He stopped. They'd nod, relieved, as if I'd just told them this place had successfully fought off a dragon. In a small way, we had. Shared space is hard. It's where private habits rub their fur the wrong way against public good. It's where American individualism meets the HOA, and both learn to compromise or perish. If there's a moral, it's not that revenge solves things. Revenge, in the cartoon sense, is too loud, too quick, too proud. What worked here was a slow burn of responsibility, applied with humor, and a refusal to escalate beyond proportion. It was neighbor revenge only in the sense that we refused to be doormats and chose methods that made the right choice easier than the wrong one. The key phrase, neighbor revenge, lives in my browser history and in 100 Reddit threads where people archive the little stupid wars of life in condos and cul-de-sacs. I get the craving those stories satisfy. But I also know the truth. The goal is not to humiliate someone into goodness. The goal is to make good behavior possible, then expected, then normal. A month after the worst of it, I ran into 3B at the downstairs coffee bar. No sunglasses, hair cut short, a Texas Rangers cap. Pickles sat quietly at his heel like a dog who'd finally been tired out on a real walk. I nodded. He nodded back. "Hey," he said, not loud. "I got it. I'm getting it. Sorry it took so long." "Thanks," I said, and meant it. We don't become better people all at once. Sometimes we just stop making the place smell bad, and that's a start. We stood there in peace for a moment, while the barista scrawled our names on cups, and the espresso machine hissed like a tiny dragon tamed by steam. When I got back to the third floor that day, the hall was quiet. The side table under the fire alarm had a half-full box of mint green bags and a handwritten note, different handwriting from either of ours. "Thanks for these. They help." Someone else had adopted the ritual. Good. That's how you keep a place decent. Not by one guy with a camera and a spreadsheet forever vigilant, but by many hands picking up, tying off, and choosing to leave nothing behind. In other words, the truest, least cinematic neighbor revenge, we outlast the mess. We replace it with ordinary care so sturdy it feels like air. That night I thought about Duke, loud breathing in my childhood room, and the yard where we never once left a mess because my dad would have given me that look over the Saturday paper and the lesson would have landed. I thought about how American culture loves a showdown but is held together by a million unsung chores. I opened my window to let the evening in and realized, almost giddy, that the apartment smelled like cedar and the faintest hint of someone's laundry. Nothing more, nothing less. And if that feels like a small ending for a noisy story, then good. We don't need a symphony. We need a steady hum. The sound a building makes when it's being looked after by people who refuse to live like animals in their own house. The next morning, I stepped into the hall with my laptop bag on my shoulder and an extra dog bag tucked in my back pocket out of habit. The elevator dinged, the doors slid open, and a neighbor I didn't know smiled and held it for me. That was it. The clean hall, the nod between strangers, the shared ride down. I pressed the button for the lobby and watched the numbers tick by, smelling exactly nothing at all. Peace at last, the quietest kind, and the only kind of neighbor revenge I'd recommend to anyone.